Roaring flames devoured the edge of the ancient elmbark woods, casting a suffocating heat that even the oldest willows could not withstand. Kael pressed a trembling hand to the cindered earth, the sharp scent of burnt sap stinging his nostrils. He didn't dare glance back at the shattered remains of the Ember Heart. He already knew his mistake had set the world aflame. "Why did you do it, Kael?" The voice, heavy with grief, belonged to Master Tauren, once his teacher, now his judge. But it wasn't Tauren's anger that hurt most. It was the disappointment in his eyes. Kael's fingers closed around the charred fragment he'd pocketed. "I had to try. The Ember Heart shouldn't be locked away forever, I thought." "You thought." A shrill caw cut through the heated air. Sable, the kingdom's talking falcon, swooped low, her feathers rimmed in soot. "You thought wrong, foolish hatchling." Despair clawed at Kael's chest, but he steeled himself as Tauren turned away, cloak dragging embers in his wake. If the wildfires breach Ardun proper, the city will fall, lives will be lost. He barely heard Sable fussing at his ear. "You have to fix this, or your name will be cursed for 100 generations. "Can it even be fixed?" Kael's voice was barely a whisper, swallowed by the roaring inferno beyond the charred meadow. "Perhaps," croaked another presence, softer, carrying the scent of moss and rain. A tall figure stood at the forest edge, ash-streaking hempen robes. Willow-masked and silent as a shadow, the stoic druid Isolde inspected the ruined talisman, green eyes unreadable behind her carved visor. "Come," she said, finally. "The forest guides those who listen, and it hungers for atonement." Reluctant but with a fragile sliver of hope, Kael brushed soot from his scorched tunic. He nodded to Sable, who hopped to his shoulder. With Isolde leading the way, they vanished into the lurking green, flanked by distant smoke and a city's fate burning behind them. The journey had begun, not to escape his blunder, but to redeem it, and perhaps himself. Kael stumbled after Isolde, every step crunching ashes underfoot. The scorched border of the woods gave way to a lush, ancient forest, where the sunlight struggled to break through tangled greenery. The fire still chased their backs, but with every step deeper, the trees seemed to lean in, whispering secrets only the druid could understand. Sable peered down from Kael's shoulder, eyeing Isolde warily. "She's not much for words, is she? How are we meant to know what to do?" Kael shook his head. "I don't know, but she hasn't turned us to mulch yet, so that's something." Suddenly Isolde halted, holding up a hand. The air thickened, and a strange chill ran down Kael's spine. Luminous green wisps drifted through the trees, the spirits of the forest drawn by the scent of burned earth and fractured magic. One wisp hovered inches from Kael's cheek, crackling softly. He fought the urge to swat it away, knowing disrespect could be dangerous. "The forest remembers," Isolde intoned, her voice echoing oddly. "To mend the Ember Heart, you must reclaim what was lost, 3 fragments scattered by wild magic. The first lies in the heart of Varen's gloom." "Varen's gloom?" Kael frowned. "Isn't that where?" "Where fools vanish," Sable supplied, feathers ruffling. "A cheerful start." Isolde knelt, tracing symbols in the blackened dirt. Roots twisted, forming a path still slick with dew, cutting through thick, uncharted land. "Follow only where the path is green," Isolde said, voice suddenly gentle. "Step elsewhere and the gloom will keep you." Kael swallowed. He thought of the fires, the faces he might never see again if he failed. He nodded, jaw setting. "Let's move. The kingdom's counting on us." Isolde led on, but even from behind, Kael could hear her whisper. A hope, or maybe a warning, to the forest. For the land's fate hangs by his courage. But with the path behind them fading to smoke and shadow, the group pressed into the unknown, every step taking Kael closer to both redemption and the darkness ahead. Daylight barely touched them as they ventured deeper into Varen's gloom. The green path twisted between ancient yew trees so thick with moss they seemed sculpted from emerald shadows. Kael's every muscle tensed. Something about these woods watched, listened, remembered. Sable broke the silence, her bright eyes flicking between the brambles. "You know, sometimes I miss the simple days, carrying messages, eating field mice, not being stalked by ghost leaves." "Try being hunted by your own mistakes," Kael muttered, forcing a smile. He flinched as a twig snapped to his left. Isolde paused, motioning for silence. Then, in a whisper, "We're not alone." A cold gust swept in, bringing with it flickers of pale blue fire, elementals drawn to the Ember Heart's shattered energy. The flames drifted just beyond the path, faces shifting like half-remembered dreams. One spirit glided forward, fixing Kael with hollow, hungry eyes. "You have burned us once? Will you burn us again?" Kael's throat closed, heart pounding, but Isolde's hand rested on his shoulder, grounding him. "He comes to mend what he has broken," she said firmly, her calm voice layering over the spirit's chill. The spirit hissed, pulling in the darkness around it. "Prove it. Face your own ruin at the heart of gloom." Suddenly the ground shook, roots parted, revealing a steep drop into the earthen gloom, at the bottom of which glimmered a jagged red shard, the first piece of the Ember Heart. Kael took a shaky breath. "Guess that's our only way through." Isolde nodded. "I will hold back the spirits. Sable, guide him." Sable cocked her head. "Jump first, ask questions later, is that the plan?" Kael looked down at the chasm, deep, dark, daunting. For Ardun, for everyone he'd let down, he swallowed his fear. No fire, no falter. And with Sable leaping off his shoulder and gliding ahead, Kael plunged into the unknown, not knowing if he'd face redemption or be swallowed by the gloom forever. Kael hurtled through clammy darkness. Branches and roots snatched at his cloak, slowing him just enough to roll to a bone-rattling stop at the bottom of the chasm. He blinked, vision swirling, then spotted Sable swooping gracefully to his side. The walls pressed in tighter down here, roots writhing like wary snakes. On the earthen floor, half buried in tangled moss, glowed the Ember Heart's crimson fragment, pulsing hot, almost alive. Kael edged forward, hand trembling. The fragment throbbed, casting flickers of memory, fires roaring across Ardun, screams, his own face twisted with guilt. He hesitated. "What if it burns me? What if I'm not meant?" Sable interrupted, pecking at his boot. "It's not about being ready. Nobody's ever really ready. You do it because you must." He nodded, determination hardening. He reached out. The moment his fingers brushed the shard, heat flared up his arm, dizzying but not painful. A warmth that felt like forgiveness and warning in one. Shadows surged from the edges. Phantom faces leered, thorny limbs clawed at his legs. Kael gritted his teeth, clutching the fragment to his chest. "Let me through! I came to make things right!" The spirits pressed close, their cold howls buffeting him. Sable screeched, diving at the nearest wraith, distracting it as Kael pressed forward, fighting the weight of his own fear. A path opened, a brief tunnel of trembling green. Kael stumbled forward, climbing out of the chasm and into the sunlight, clutching the reclaimed fragment. He collapsed at Isolde's feet, gasping, soot-streaked but smiling through the sweat and tears. Isolde knelt and examined the shard. "This is Hope's Ember recovered. 2 remain. Are you prepared to face what's next?" Kael looked at the fragment, then at Isolde and Sable. "We don't have a choice. Ardun depends on us." Above, the wind shifted, carrying the scent of distant wildfires. The journey was far from over, but for the first time Kael felt a flicker of strength within him, small but growing brighter. Their path out of Varen's gloom was steeper than Kael remembered, roots twisting in silent warning. Brandishing the glowing shard, Kael felt it beating against his fist like a second heart, fiery, anxious, alive. Isolde led swiftly, neem branch staff in hand, scanning the shadows with those watchful moss-colored eyes. "Where to now, druid?" Sable asked, fluttering overhead. Isolde knelt, pressing her palm to the earth. "North to the whispering fens. The next fragment lies beneath still waters, guarded by an ancient grudge." Kael grimaced. Stories of the fens had stalked his nightmares. Ghost lights, drowning hands, things that pulled you under and never let go. But with the shard in hand, and his friends steady beside him, he swallowed his fear. "Let's keep moving." They walked for hours, sunlight thinning into silver haze as the land grew watery. The fens crept up, sickly reeds and faint murmurs, frost-tipped lilies bobbing on black pools. The mud clutched at their boots. As they neared the largest pond, an icy hush fell. Then, without warning, the surface rippled, and a lithe figure rose from the water, draped in algae and starlight. Her voice chilled the air. "Who seeks the ember's truth in my domain?" Kael stepped forward, voice tight but steady. "I shattered the Ember Heart, but I've come to repair what I broke. We need your help." The water spirit's eyes glinted blue. "Help? When your fire brings only hunger and ruin? Prove you cherish balance, face my trial. If you fail, the fens will claim you." Sable muttered. "Wish I could fly over this bit." Isolde nodded grimly to Kael. "You must go. Trust the currents. Remember why you fight." Heart pounding, Kael waded into the freezing water. Branches whipped behind, sealing him off. He whispered, "No fire, no falter," barely above the shivering reeds. And as frigid darkness swallowed him, Kael wondered if courage like fire could endure when all else turned cold. Icy water clawed at Kael's skin as he waded deeper, every step yanking his breath shorter. Shadows undulated beneath the surface. Branches overhead creaked, and the whispering fens' soft murmurs twisted into urgent, unintelligible voices. Sable paced the bank, wings fluttering anxiously. "You can do this, Kael. Just think warm thoughts, hot pies, summer hay, roasted beetles." With teeth chattering, Kael pressed on until his feet found nothing. Water sucked him under. Panic roared. Something slick brushed his ankle, dragging him lower. Kael flailed in the gloom, lungs burning, but then the glow of the first ember fragment pulsed through his coat. Pale red fire in the darkness, guiding him. He remembered the water spirit's words, "Face my trial." As bubbles escaped his mouth, a memory surged forth. Boyhood, peering through castle gates at the king's druids weaving spells of rain and renewal. Kael had envied that power, wanted too much, too fast. That greed had shattered the heart. He squeezed the fragment tighter. "I don't want power. I want to mend what I ruined. Show me how." Suddenly, the water cleared to reveal a vision. Ardun's fields, brown and dying, villagers weeping over empty wells. The land's pain was real. Kael ached for the harm he'd caused. From the deep silt, another shard emerged, encased in unmelting ice. He reached for it. It burned with unnatural cold, forcing him to grit his teeth and push through the numb ache. The water spirit's voice surrounded him, softer now. "You have seen, and you have suffered. Take the shard, but remember, balance is earned, never given." The current surged, thrusting Kael to the surface. He coughed, splashing back onto the muddy shore, the icy fragment clutched in one hand. Sable and Isolde hurried over. Isolde nodded with rare pride. "You learn quickly, Kael. The land may yet forgive." Kael lay shivering, but 2 shards glowed at his chest. "One more to go. I'll fix this, no matter the cost." Above the fens, storm clouds gathered, as if the world itself waited to see whether hope would rise or be drowned after all. Sharp winds ripped through the whispering fens as Kael, Isolde, and Sable pressed on, now carrying 2 shards. The warmth of fire and the chill of the deep nestled close to Kael's heart. Each step felt heavier. The sky above rumbled, warning of tempests yet to come. As the land sloped upward and the wet ground faded, they entered an unfamiliar realm. Jagged rocks jutted from the earth like broken teeth. Thorn bushes tangled the foothills of the old volcano, Mount Ashvane, its peak lost in cloud and shadow. Sable circled warily. "This is it. Fire's cradle. The last fragment is up there, isn't it?" Isolde nodded, her face grave. "Mount Ashvane, where flame was first gifted to Ardun, but that power is not unguarded." Kael flexed his shaking hands and stuffed them in his pockets. "What's waiting for us?" "Something old," said Isolde. "It remembers every misuse of fire, every broken oath." Lightning forked. Thunder chased echoes off the volcanic cliffs. As they climbed, the very air seemed charged, hairs at their necks rising in warning. A mysterious figure appeared on the path above, outlined by the red glow of lava fissures. Cloaked in midnight and carrying a staff of blackened iron, the wanderer stepped into their way. "Seeking redemption, are you?" The voice was sharp, worn, familiar yet foreign. Kael's heart lurched. "Who are you?" The wanderer's hood fell back, revealing scarred features that tugged at memory. "Call me Roan. Once I carried embers too." Isolde's hand twitched towards her staff. "We mean no harm. We need only the final shard." Roan barked a hollow laugh. "Every fool says that until the mountain makes them choose. To claim the heart, you must give up what holds you to this world." Kael met Roan's shadow-dark eyes. "If it saves Ardun, I'll pay any price." The volcano trembled, and distant roars hinted at something stirring beneath the stone. Sable ruffled her feathers, eyeing Kael with silent worry. Roan gestured up the mountain. "Then follow. The fire is waiting, and it does not grant mercy easily." Lightning split the sky as the ragtag group pressed onward, knowing the hardest sacrifice waited just ahead. Heat and rage battered Kael and his companions as they climbed higher along Mount Ashvane's jagged spine. Every breath was cinders, every step a battle against exhaustion and stinging rock. Roan strode ahead with measured certainty, never seeming to tire. A sudden wall of flame roared up, halting their ascent. The ground shook, cracks spitting out shimmering lava. Kael tightened his grip on the two shards in his satchel, feeling their energy pulse as if warning him. From within the fire, a voice boomed, an ancient, elemental growl. "You who would restore the Ember Heart, speak your purpose." Kael coughed through the scorched air, forcing himself to stand tall. "I broke what should have been protected. Now I climb to reclaim it, not for myself but for Ardun." The flames twisted, coalescing into a hulking fire spirit with eyes of molten gold. Sable hopped nervously from one talon to the other. Isolde, raising her staff, whispered, "Courage, Kael." The spirit stepped aside, leaving a path across fields of smoldering boulders. Only the heart that burns with sacrifice may enter the mountain's forge. Kael led the way, sweat plastering his hair to his head, determination fighting fear with every step. Inside the caldera, shadows danced on the fiery walls. At its center, encased in searing glass, hovered the third fragment of the Ember Heart. Roan stood before it, staff planted firmly in the ground. "This is where fire both creates and destroys," he said. "What will you surrender for the heart's final shard, Kael?" Kael swallowed, feeling all eyes upon him. Family faces flickered in his mind, flashes of an easier selfish life he'd once dreamed. Could he really give up everything he'd known to redeem Ardun? "You must choose," said Roan, voice as relentless as the fire. Kael turned to his companions. Sable nodded, courage shining through the fear. Isolde's gaze was soft. "If your heart hesitates, the land will remain broken. But if it's true, the heart will know." Kael stepped forward, voice steady. "I give up my claim to power, my chance to ever wield magic again. If only Ardun may live." A blinding flash tore through the forge as the mountain's spirits judged his sacrifice. Kael shielded his eyes, and when the fire cleared, the final shard hovered before him, burning, waiting, and the earth quietly trembled for what must come next. The roar of the volcano faded to an eerie silence as Kael claimed the final Ember Heart shard, its weight settling heavily into his palm. Heat prickled along his skin, the three fragments pulsing together, fire, ice, and hope singing in tense harmony. Sweat ran freely down his brow, but clarity sharpened his thoughts. This was the moment Ardun's fate and his own would be decided. Roan gave a single nod, pride and sorrow mingling in his scarred expression. "Now you must bind what was broken. But know this, restoring the heart will demand the truth from all shadows, not just yours." Isolde approached Kael, holding out a vine-woven satchel. "The sacred grove at Ardun's heart is the only place where the shards can be made whole, but it has grown, twisted. The wildfires scorched the earth, and vengeful spirits now guard the old altar." Kael looked to Sable. "You're still with me, even if this goes wrong?" Sable narrowed her eyes, spirits lifting. "Someone has to make sure you don't trip over your feet at the world's end. Besides, who else will tell the tale?" They hurried down the mountain, urgency spurring each step. As they reached the charred borders of the sacred grove, the air thickened with power and memory. Gnarled trees arched overhead, scorched but alive, roots guarding the shattered altar beneath a blackened elm. Vengeful spirits burst from the ground, wailing, swirling in a fury of wind and embers. "You!" they shrieked, recognizing Kael. "You shattered the Ember Heart. It's too late to heal what you've broken." Kael faltered, guilt gnawed. Then Roan stepped beside him, staff ablaze. "All of Ardun's pain cannot be healed by regret alone. Show them your change, Kael. Bind the heart, not for yourself, but for all." Isolde raised her staff, chanting softly. Sable flapped upward, creating a cyclone to draw spirits aside. Kael stood tall in the chaos, palms bleeding as he pressed the shards to the altar. The earth trembled, light surged. In the blinding storm between worlds, visions spun around him. His childhood, laughter with his parents, Tauren's teachings, the destruction he'd caused. But also hope and new growth sprouting through ash. He cried out, "I accept what I have done. I offer my magic, my pride, my future dreams. Only give Ardun peace." The altar fractured, swallowing the shards. A burst of fire and green light exploded into the sky, scattering the spirits and shaking the whole kingdom. Kael collapsed, panting, unsure if he'd succeeded or if the price would prove too high. All that remained was the aftermath, the reckoning, and whatever future he had chosen for them all. Kael blinked through swirling lights and settling ash, ears ringing from the impact of magic. The ground beneath him dully pulsed with new life, green shoots pressing through black soil, the faint trickle of water where there'd only been dust. All around, the once wildfires guttered. Sunlight pierced the clouded sky, gilding the grove with hope. He sat up slowly, heart hammering as he gazed at his trembling hands. They no longer buzzed with power, the old thrill of magic now just a memory. The Ember Heart, whole once more, floated above the altar, burning with a gentle, golden light. Isolde stood beside him, pride glowing in her eyes. You chose sacrifice over self. The heart has accepted your gift. Sable landed on Kael's knee, her feathers finally free of soot. If you ever decide to ruin any more ancient relics, just remember, I'm only sticking around for the drama. A dry, strained laugh escaped Kael. Roan knelt beside the altar, reverent and quiet, his scars softening with relief. The spirits have withdrawn, the land has chosen renewal. Villagers appeared at the edge of the grove, drawn by the storm's end. They gazed at Kael, some with awe, others with hesitation. A child broke away, running toward him with arms wide. The trees are growing again, you fixed it! Kael hugged the child to his chest, tears stinging soot-streaked cheeks. For the first time he believed he might deserve forgiveness. Torin came forward, older and grayer than Kael remembered, but his gaze was warm at last. You have exceeded every lesson I tried to teach by learning to let go. Kael looked at his companions. Isolde silent but proud, Sable ever watchful, Roan returned to hope. He nodded to them all. Thank you for faith I didn't deserve, for giving me the chance to put things right. Isolde smiled quietly. The Ember Heart will remain, watched by druids and guarded by the land. Ardun will recover and remember. The sun climbed higher as villagers, young and old, joined to rebuild. Kael helped carry water, mend fields, and plant seeds. Though the ache of lost magic remained, a new strength burned in him. A strength found in humility, and the unwavering courage that only comes from facing your own ruin and choosing to try again. Beneath the ancient elm, the Ember Heart shone, a beacon not just of power, but of hope renewed. And so, surrounded by friends and a kingdom healing, Kael's story became legend. Not of the boy who broke the heart, but of the Ember Tamer, who changed Ardun's fate and learned at last the true nature of balance.